This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories.
And welcome to my ranking of the 8 best shows from 2023. And I am going to be considering any show that had either most of or its entire run in 2023, but it also did have to end in 2023. So any shows that ended in 2024 would not count, although some may get an honorable mention, as you'll see in just a moment. But for honorable mentions, instead of doing shows like previous years that I think nearly made it, instead I'm going to look at shows that either didn't complete its run or shows that did have the potential but ultimately failed. So I'm looking at those instead of other ones, so it feels like that was kind of a cheap move and it's just used to extend some extra points, but let's take a look at my 3 honorable mentions since I am changing that part of the series up. And at number 3 for these honorable mentions, and that is just fully for the reason that it did not finish. If it did finish, it would probably be at like number 2 on this list, based on just how it's been so far, is Invincible Season 2, alongside its special episode Invincible Adam Eve, because honestly, this was a really great season so far. I've really been enjoying it, and this is the only reason this is not on this list, and is almost certainly going to be making it to next year's list, is the fact that it didn't finish its run in 2023 and is going to be finishing its run in 2024. So I'll have to consider it a 2024 show. And since its run hasn't finished, I can't put it on here, but still is an honorable mention. At number 2 is one of the two that definitely had potential to be really great in making this list, but sadly didn't. And that is The Mandalorian Season 3. Although it was a good season, it just wasn't a great season like the previous two. And honestly, it's really hard to say. I don't think there was a huge problem with the season, but it didn't also have anything truly great about it. Other people didn't love the focus on Bo-Katan. Honestly, I find her as a more compelling character than Din Djarin, and I think I am getting pretty tired of Grogu. But still, I think that it definitely had potential, and just it could have been a lot better. But for this one specifically, I don't know what they could have done to make it better. Just it could have been, and it could have ranked a lot higher. And at number 1, the show that had the most potential, but honestly was just messed up so badly, was the 9th and final season of The Flash. It was just so disappointing to see this season where most of the episodes were on the really bad side, but when they had some of the most incredible episodes of the series also in it, mainly being the ones where we got to see Barry and Oliver's final interaction in that final sort of crossover episode, and the first episode of the finale. It was honestly really great, and parts of the finale was also really great. It was just the fact that the showrunner just wants to focus on the side characters, and we're getting all these random, pointless side stories that nobody cares about instead of getting one final journey with the Flash. It was just so disappointing, and if they put the effort they put into those 2 episodes into the entire season, that focus and dedication would have made it so great. Also, if they had literally anyone else playing Red Death, it would have made it a lot better because that was just an awful, awful casting choice. And although the actress was fine in Batwoman, she was awful in this, and it literally made this arc that had Red Death go from something that could have been pretty good to just completely awful because her performance completely ruined it. The script wasn't even bad or anything, it was just such an awful performance. And I think this might be the first time that a performance significantly made something worse to me. Although, I can't think of everything, but this is the biggest example of it. It's honestly so disappointing, and I was really considering doing like a semi rewrite of this final season, where I mainly just changed some things around. But I'm not sure if I would do that. But would want to know if you want to see it, so let me know about that in the comments. And going to the actual list, starting at number 8, we have What If Season 2. And this show barely made it onto this list by its release date since it did finish on the 30th. And since my final date for this would be the 31st, I probably still would have considered this also if it went to the first, since basically its entire run was in 2023. And that's one of the exceptions I would make if they had almost the entire season in one year and like 1 or 2 episodes in the next year. That's what I said most of for the season. And honestly, this is just a really fun season. It had a lot of great stories, some really well made ones, and although this wasn't as good as the first season, I still really enjoyed it, and I think it had overall better episodes than the first season. Although I think the first season was more consistently good. But yeah, honestly, this was such a fun season. Had so many great moments, and it was just so enjoyable overall. I think that it definitely deserves its ranking here, and although it was good, it's my least favorite of these 8, but still think it deserves to be at number 8. At number 7, we have My Adventures with Superman Season 1. And this was honestly another great season. Really well made, and the cast was amazing. I think they did a great job with everything. Although I'm personally not a huge fan of the art style, it still did look good, and honestly, I think that it was just a really solid season overall. They did a great job building mystery with all this Kryptonian tech, and eventually it got to a point where things were just really intense, although the reveal that the general was Lois's father was extremely obvious. It still was well done, and the people uniting behind Superman was really nice. And honestly, this was just such a great, fun, and interesting season overall. And even though it is at number 7, that's not saying much bad about it. It's just there's so many other shows that I enjoyed more. I think it definitely deserves to be here at number 7. At number 6 is the 14th and final season of Archer. And this season was really solid, and I think if it wasn't for Into the Cold, it probably would have been at number 8 on this list. But I think that Archer Into the Cold, which although they're not considering it part of the season, I am for this since it is part of its 2023 release, was a very satisfying conclusion to Archer. It wrapped up everything really well and just gave us a really great ending to everything. It was just such an incredible ending, and I really enjoyed watching it. It was just so much fun to see, and I honestly think that they did a great job with it. Going to the season as a whole, it had a lot of fun stuff, although it was clearly trying to set up more for the future, introducing the new character of Zara and having her working with the agency, putting Lana in this new command position, and having it being a little more, just normal adventures for them instead of wrapping things up. Made it very clear that when making this season, they didn't know it was going to be the final season. And from what I saw from some interviews I saw online, is that they didn't know it and were able to get a final special event out of the producers so they could wrap up the story and have a satisfying conclusion, which is great because so many other shows don't get that, and it's always disappointing when you never see these characters again and never know what happens to them. It is always disappointing with that, but I'm glad we got this conclusion, and that final episode pushes this from what I would say is number 8 to number 6 because it was just that great of a conclusion and great of an episode. But at number 5 is Loki Season 2, which was a truly incredible season. It did have a sort of weaker episode, which was the one where Loki was trying to figure everything out. But that episode was still a really good one. It was just not as great as the rest of them. It had some great moments and really great ending. There was also the incredible finale, which is one of not the best episodes of TV Marvel has produced. At least it is probably the best from the MCU because it was just so well made. Loki's ultimate redemption and sacrifice was great in it, and everything was just perfect about it with the conclusion and seeing where everybody went. I think it was just such a great season, and although it does give a definitive end to it, I would love to see a conclusion to, all these characters that takes place in other movies or shows because it seems clear we're not getting another season of Loki, but we can get other seasons of, shows that could look at the characters. I think it's rumored Mobius is going to appear in Deadpool 3, which would be really cool. And I do hope we see Loki in the eventual Avengers movie, which may or may not feature King now based on everything that's been going on. Who really knows, but I do hope to see Loki coming again with this version specifically being the redeemed Loki who is kind of the center of the multiverse now because it really was an incredible season and can't wait to see what happens with it next. Just outside the top 3, at number 4, we have The Continental, and this was a really incredible 3 episode event. It's, maybe not fully a show, but since it is episodes, it's sort of set up in a show format. Although you could say it's just an extremely long movie, released over 3 weeks, it was still just a really incredible series and super well made. It was just awesome to see the backstory of Winston, how he got the Continental, and a really epic battle at the end. The taking of the Continental was just awesome, and it's very easy to see who Winston would grow up into, and I think the actors they chose really well resemble who they grow up to be, with them resembling their older actors very well. It was just a really incredible season, really well made, great action scenes, and everything you'd expect from something from the world of John Wick. And it makes me very excited to see, I believe it's the the ballerina or something next year, or actually this year. I think it's this year. It might be next year. I can't remember if it's 2024 or 2025. But yeah, honestly, it was really just an awesome show and really well made. It gives a lot of development that, although wasn't fully needed, was just really awesome to see. Now going into the top three, I think that number three and two are just really close, and they probably could flip around for me depending on the day. But at number three, I put The Bad Batch Season 2, and this was a truly incredible season. Definitely better than the first. Had some amazing episodes, and although there was some that is, considered filler, it still was great. We had a lot of fun little adventures throughout the season, but also some dark, crazy, and messed up episodes. Its best was when we were looking at Crosshair, and two of my favorites were the episodes that starred Crosshair. The Cody one and the one with Mayday were truly incredible looks to the clones in the Empire, seeing how they dealt with everything. And the one with Mayday might be my favorite, but it is pretty close, with the finale being Plan 99, which I'll get to in just a moment because there was incredible episodes throughout. The Clone Conspiracy arc was another great one, and it had an incredible appearance by Palpatine, voiced by the legendary Ian McDiarmid. He did such a great job just taking events that looked like it could have been a major blow for the Empire and is able to completely 180 it to get exactly what he wants out of the galaxy. In fact, it seems that, although it's speculated by the characters, it seems likely for Palpatine and his brilliance that his plan the entire time was for this to happen. Him framing Admiral Rampart was a nice little touch, and it was just a great arc overall. But its best point was arguably the final episode. Really hard between that and the one where we got to see Crosshair finally breaking. Really close between the two of those, but that final episode, or really two episodes, was an incredible series of events where we got to see them trying to go to rescue Crosshair and then everything going wrong. From saying what was hopefully the death of Tech, mainly because I think that this should be a really big stake to set up the final season, and I do hope Tech didn't survive, just for the fact that it would feel kind of cheap. And the capturing of Omega after Sid's betrayal, which was foreshadowed for most of the season, was just a really great ending and sets up an epic third and final season, which I can't wait to see once it releases this year. But yeah, honestly, this was really close, and as I said, this kind of could switch around with what number two is, but both are just around the same point for me because they both were really great, but number two just slightly goes over this because I really did enjoy number two a lot. At number two is Ahsoka, and although, especially for the back half, some people didn't love it, I personally loved Ahsoka the entire time. I had so much fun with it. It really was a great series, and it's just one of my favorite things out of all of Star Wars because, especially Disney Star Wars, since it's close, feels the closest to George Lucas Star Wars, it feels like something we could have got from him, and it was just really incredible. I think Thrawn was really well done in this. He wasn't perfect. I think that we didn't get a true show of his brilliance yet, but we get to see that he is at least a significant threat and that he is not someone to mess with. It really was extremely entertaining to see everything and I really can't wait to see what conclusion we get with this because we're either getting a second season or we'll definitely get it resolved in the ultimate Dave Filoni Star Wars film. Really excited to see where this goes because this season was exciting. It's some great moments like the appearance of Anakin Skywalker, which was truly amazing, and honestly, I just really enjoyed it. But I want to know what you thought about Ahsoka since I know it is a little more controversial. I loved it, but I know some people really hated it. So I don't know what you think about it. But let's move on to what easily was number one from the moment I saw it. And as I said at the beginning of the year, I thought that only Ahsoka even stood a chance of beating it, but it didn't because although I really enjoyed Ahsoka, it was not as incredibly well made as this. So let's go on to number one. At number one, we have the third season of Superman and Lois, and this was an incredible season. I loved the season from the beginning to end. It was so well written, so realistically written, and it was just truly incredible. We had a great threat in Bruno Mannheim, who was definitely a little different than he was in the comics, but still extremely well done. He posed a great threat to really everyone, and it was just awesome to see him in this. Really well acted, but that was really nothing compared to the incredible storyline we had about Lois Lane having cancer and battling through it. The entire storyline was so well told, so interesting, and it was easily the best part of not just the season, but the entire series. It was handled so humanly and realistically. It was just truly incredible. It felt like you could have just been watching a real person who had cancer going through this. And although I personally haven't had someone that's extremely close to me have cancer, it was just exceptionally well done. Felt really incredible, and it was just so well made. It was really incredibly done and had just so many other great stuff on top of it. Of course, its ending is something that was also incredible and makes me so disappointed that there was a strike because I have no idea when season 4 is going to premiere. Hopefully soon because that season was incredible, and the fact that Lex Luthor is going to be the threat for the final season of the show and that he unleashed Doomsday in a way better way than he did in Batman vs. Superman, and the fact that it looks better than it did in Batman vs. Superman is just going to be insane to see if they're going to go with something like Death of Superman, or at least disappearance of him for some time. I cannot wait to see what is done in the next and final season because this season was truly incredible. But yeah, honestly, I want to know what you think about these shows. What would you put as your top 8 shows of the year? Please let me know that in the comments. And I'll see you in the next episode of Legends and Theories.
Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.